Archer, right? So yeah, Priya is already presenting some slides, so maybe we can quickly go through the slides. Can you move to the next slide,
Okay,
Priya?
so I have only one page of introduction. You can continue.
Okay, okay. Then before that, right? So I'll just quickly share my screen, right? I mean, for this session, right? Again, right? I don't have a lot of content prepared, right? I'll just give you an overview of what API is, right? So if you talk about a typical web application, right? APIs are very important, very crucial part of web development these days, right? So if you talk about early 2000s web applications, they 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 would simply develop a front end, right, which is a web view, and then they will directly integrate that with the database using your typical connection string, right? Database connectors, or if it's a SQL database, then you will directly integrate with using a connection string, right? Where you put the database URL, username, password, and select the database, right? That presented a challenge to the website owners because it exposes your database directly, right? And hacker can easily look at those connection strings, and then that will give them access to the complete database, right? So to to uh, to counter that problem, right? That was the reason why APIs were integrated. Okay, yeah, sorry, APIs were invented, right? So APIs kind of they act as a bridge between the front end and the database. So APIs are nothing but it's a URL. Typically, it's a URL where you pass certain parameters, right? And then you get some response from the database, right? It we don't have to really expose the whole database uh, to the uh, to the front end, to the web part of the web application. Okay, so when APIs were initially introduced, we used to have SOAP APIs, right? So there are two types of APIs, right? The SOAP APIs, these are the older ones where we had less flexibility. The response was typically always in XML, right? I'm sure you guys are familiar.
Sorry
Yes.
for the interruption, Gurdas. We are not able to see your screen. We can see the participants' details only, like who joined,
Okay.
but we
Okay.
are
Let
not able
me.
to see any content.
Well, okay. Can you see now?
Yes, now it's visible.
Oh, okay. My bad. Right. So maybe I've shared something else. Okay, right. So back to APIs, right? So we have SOAP APIs and REST APIs. These are the two types of APIs which are there in Archer, right? SOAP API is again an older way of using APIs. It's little more complex to use, little less flexible, right? You would only get data in XML format, and then I'm sure you guys know what's XML and JSON, right? It's just yeah, it's just a way of representing data, right? So I can quickly Google, right, XML data examples, right? So if you right, so this is kind of an XML format, right? So you have nodes, right? And then you have starting and ending tag, right? And then this is like this is like four fields, right? If you talk about um, if you try to relate it to a record in Archer, right? So to, from, heading, and body, it's like a fields. So this XML contains data of four fields for a record, right? So this is how your typical XML structure is. And then we have JSON, right, which is more which is considered lightweight in terms of data transfer, right? So if we talk about JSON example, right, it doesn't have the starting and ending tag. It simply has your uh, object or array, right? So anything which starts with your curly brace, it's called object, and anything which starts with uh, square brackets, right? So that's called an array, right? So it's just bunch of objects and arrays um, stacked together, right? And that creates a JSON type of data, right? So here we have the same data, right? Glossary title, and then we have the same data in XML as well, right? So you can see the difference. So apparently the REST data, it's lighter in terms of size and then in terms of transport as well as compared to XML, right? That's why the RESTful APIs are typically use JSON as the output. And we will see that in Archer as well, right? So the SOAP APIs, they always return XML. The REST APIs, they always return uh, JSON. But then uh, the one advantage that we have from JSON, from REST APIs is that we can configure what kind of data that we want to receive, right? So we can always configure it to send XML data or text data or JSON data, right? But that also depends on if that API has been enabled to send out XML data. So the point is that we can enable those when we are defining the REST APIs. Okay, um, so that's on JSON and XML, right? So back to our API. So Archer, we have both SOAP and RESTful APIs, and then we will later look into it as well, right? How so SOAP APIs for SOAP APIs there is a so here I have an environment, right? If I yes, so if I just put WS, which is called web service, right, and then general dot ASMX, right? So this will this is kind of a SOAP API that Archer has, right? Uh, it's little slow, so just give it a couple of seconds, right? So this is a SOAP API which can be used to authenticate the request, right? So every API needs to be authenticated with either a username or password, maybe a session token, right? An authentication token. Every tool has their own way of authentication. And in Archer, we have something called session token. And guys, please stop me at any point of time if you want to ask something or if you're confused or if you do not understand what I'm saying, right? You don't have to wait for me to stop. Okay. So uh, APIs, right? So whenever you're dealing with APIs, the first thing you need to understand is how the APIs are authenticated. And then every tool offers their own way of authentication, right? Some tools offers that you just pass a username and password like we typically have an Archer login, right? We have username and password, right? We also have instance if it's a multi-instance environment, right? So we have instance, then we need these three things to log in. And again, right, we can use these three things to create a session token. Whenever we log into Archer, that also creates a session token. And you can, do you guys see this pop-up here? It's I've clicked on this thing, right? This icon here. But do you guys see a pop-up over here?
Yes.
This connection is secure, cookies and site data. It's visible, right?
Yes, yes, we are able
Yes,
to
it
Okay,
is.
see.
right. So whenever you log into Archer environment, right? So you can always click on this. You can click on cookies and site data. Further click on cookies. then your base URL cookies, and then here, right, Archer session cookie. So this is the session token. This is the format of a session token that you need to authenticate every API request in Archer. Okay. So there are multiple ways you can generate that token. You can log in with the user, and then by doing something similar, right, you can access this in Chrome, your Edge browser, your Safari if you're in Mac, right, whatever browser that you're using, you can always access this API, this cookie, right? It's called session token. And then you can directly put that in any of the API requests, or there are, in case of a SOAP API, right, we have something called create user session from instance method, right? So you can click on this, you can pass in your username, your instance name, and your password. And then if you click on invoke, that will generate a session token for you, right? So let's do one thing, right? So let's just quickly create a user, or maybe I can use one of the existing ones. Data admin one, right? Sorry, just give me a moment. I think I have the password already with me. Yes. Data.admin one, and the instance name is OOB, right? Data.admin one, instance name is OOB, and then this is the password. And if, when you click on invoke, right, so it will give you this this user session token, right? So again, you can try this in one of your environments as well, right? Wherever you guys are working, or if you have access to any of the test environment, right? So you can try. So you can just put w/general.tsmx, right? That will give you a bunch of methods. You can click on this create user session from instance, and then you can put a username, instance, and password. You can try putting your username, instance, and password as well. And then when you click on invoke, it will create the session token. Now, this session token can be used in other methods. Like for example, right, if I duplicate this, and then there is something called search.asmx. Now, this is the search API. Again, right, it's a SOAP API. But SOAP APIs gives you different methods, right? We typically use uh, if we are using SOAP, then we use general report, search, and then we also use, I think it's called record.asmx to create record, to get record by ID, like all those things, right? So let's just try one of these, right? So let's say get record by ID. Okay. So what does it need? It needs a session token, it needs a module ID, and it needs a content ID, right? So what I will do is I will invoke this. I will create a session token over here, right? I will put the session token over here, right? And then let's just find a record. Uh, let's go to findings, and then do you guys see at this? So just focus on this little area, right, which is the black border over here. When I hover over this finding 6, do you see this JavaScript $PBC 348,575 then 16162? Do you guys see?
Yes, lower left.
Right. Okay. So yeah. So it's on the left bottom corner, right? So this is your record ID, which is the tracking ID, right? Which you can put it there, right? And then we have the module ID, and then we have the level ID. Sorry, I think it's level ID and module ID, right? So you can just copy this 34, 85, 75. You can put it there. 34, 85, 75. My bad, it's the content ID in this case. And then module ID, I believe it's 62. And let's try to click, right? So this is your record XML. Okay, let me put it in here, right? And see if I can format it. Uh, okay, wait. Or I can use an XML formatter. Right, so I can put it there, and then you see. So record sequential ID, which is like a application ID, and this is your system ID. This is your updated date, updated login, field ID, right? So you will always get data in terms of field IDs, not field names, right? So one of the challenge that we have here is that we need some kind of map which will have all these field ID and then field names, right? Otherwise, it would be very hard for us to understand like which field is 2265, right? Then type is again, right? If it's a string, then we have type one. If it's numeric, there's a whole list, right? If it's string, then one. If it's numeric, two. Then I believe for all types of fields that we have a type ID, which you can see over here. And then what you can do is you can use this SOAP APIs in your code. There are ways of using the SOAP APIs in your code, and then you will get this data as a response, and then you will have to modify this data, right? So like whatever you want to do, right? So maybe you want to get the name and the finding description, right? If you go back to this record, right? So what I want is I want this name and finding this description, right? So these two things I want, and then I just want to put it there. I want to put it in service now. Okay. So what you can do is you can use the SOAP APIs to get this data, right? And then you would want to uh, where is it? So you would want to get those data from this XML using the field IDs, right? So you should know how to parse XML, how to play with data, right? So again, I think if you're trying to build a utility, right, in Python, PowerShell, C Sharp, then uh, you would have to learn how to parse this data and then how to transform this data into the way that you need, right? So again, right, a little bit of coding experience will always help, but then Chat GPT or Gemini can help you write that code for you as well, right? It's not that uh, it's getting way too easy these days to code, right? So I think you're good. You guys are good on that side as well, right? Another thing, right? So we also have search API where we can search records by a report, right? And then what we can do over here is we can put the session token over here, right? So now let's get the first page, and then we need to put a record ID over here. So, all right, so if let's access one of the reports, right? Let's say all findings. The report ID is 10388. Again, at the bottom, you can see, right? Report ID equals to 10388, right? So it's a very simple report to give you list of all the findings. Sorry. It's 10388. Okay, right? So you can put this 10388. You can put the page number, right? If if there are more records, right? Uh, in the report, right? So this is the XML of all the records with all the fields that are there in this report. Again, let me format this a little bit. Okay. So now you see, right, records count is 27. And then we have metadata, which is the field definition first, right? In this case, right, 2260 is finding ID, 2269 is overall status, 2270 is category, right? So you have the field definition first under metadata, right? And then level counts. And from here, right, from record starts your actual data, right? So like this is your first record, this is your second record, this is your third record, right? Your fourth record. Again, right, it's just bunch of record nodes placed in this XML. Okay, so this is how you can access a report data with SOAP APIs. If you want to access your record, a particular record, you can use the record APIs. There are a lot of functions available, right? You also have update record, or you have update records, right? Where you can update. Yes, Johnny.
Yeah, hi. Actually,
Hey,
this page is what it is not related from the Archer, right? This page which you are showing.
yeah. No, no. This is related to Archer. It's an
I
Archer
mean, not
instance.
from the Archer page, right? This one, or the outside some other link it is.
So, okay, how you can access is if you open any of your Archer instance, right?
Okay,
Like this is one of the test instance that I borrow from someone, right? For
okay.
training purpose, right? This is your URL, right? So you see this URL, right?
Yeah,
And
this is normal.
this,
Okay,
yeah, this is your base URL. You have your server, and then sometimes you have slash archer, sometimes you have slash RSA Archer, right? If you guys know,
Yes,
it was owned by
yes, yes.
RSA before, right? Now it's not, right? So you just copy that URL, you put it in a new tab, you type ws and then slash general.asmx for general, record.asmx for record API, search.asmx for search API. That's how you can access these API within your environments.
Okay,
Okay.
okay, got it,
Uh,
got it.
yeah. So you can quickly Google as well, right? Archer SOAP APIs, right? And then this is the Archer Help Center. It's an online Archer documentation, right?
Hmm.
And then these are all the available web services, right? And then you have classes and methods under access control. If you want to create roles, assign roles, get groups, right, get user, if you want to get some
Okay.
user details, right? Field classes, if you want to get field details, value list details, right? General
Hmm.
classes for your creating or terminating user session. You have module class to get module information. You have record class to create, delete, update record, right? Or you bind content to child level content. Again, right, lot of functions are
Okay.
available. We typically use create record, create records, update records, right? Get record by ID.
Get record.
And then we also use, if at all needed, right? Search records by report. I'll just give
Okay.
you a sort of a use case for this, right? How
Okay.
typically integration
So
is.
when the
Yeah,
actual class comes, you will be showing the from the scratch, like how you'll be
exactly.
creating the API. Okay.
Yes. I mean, I will show you which ones are typically used for an integration, right? Of
Okay.
course, we cannot go through all of these, right? Because
Yeah, at
otherwise
least
it will
one
take.
A to Z of one, that will be fine. That will be great.
No, no.
From the
Again,
scratch.
right? We
Yeah.
will look into a practical integration as well, right? Where we will integrate Archer with ServiceNow, right? How we can
Okay.
do that in different ways, right? Uh, we will look into it. We'll actually use these APIs,
Okay.
right? Yes. Sorry, I think there was
Okay.
another
Thank you.
question from Joe.
Hi. Yeah,
Hey.
everything that you're showing now
Hmm.
is based specifically on SOAP, correct? SOAP APIs.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, okay. Just want to confirm this. All right.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm
So,
just giving you an overview, right? This is SOAP API. Again, right? It's an old tech. We rarely use SOAP APIs, but we have the REST APIs as well, right? So this is like REST API segment. We have same thing, right? Authentication, we have content, we have ways to execute data feed with an API, right? User management, get advanced workflow actions, right? All the things are there. But then the one thing which is missing there in RESTful APIs is searching data with a report. That's not there yet, right? So oftentimes when I have integrated Archer with some tool, right? I use maybe for authentication a REST API. Then I create a report in Archer to get data. I use the search API to get that data, and then I transform that data into whatever I need, right? And then I just push it to the tool, the ServiceNow or Salesforce, whatever, right? So again, we for now we need both, you know, unless Archer comes up with a report API in RESTful as well, right? So, but unfortunately,
s-
it's not there yet. Yes.
so we need to understand both methods of pushing and pulling data, um, whether it be SOAP or REST. But if you're going to use SOAP, it's more extensible. Um, you have more ability to do things with SOAP as opposed to REST. Am I
Well,
correct?
not really, right? Because SOAP doesn't have uh, methods to get your workflow action or perform workflow actions, right? It doesn't
Ah,
have
yes.
methods to smart data publication API. There are no security events report API, right? Uh, data data gateway connection, right? Again, there are things because see these options, right? Security events report API, smart data publications, these are recent addition to Archer, which is why they have stopped developing any new SOAP methods. They are only developing new REST API segments, new REST API methods, right? So in future releases, you will only see more options added to the REST API, but not to SOAP API. The only API which I have used from SOAP in my integration is the report API, because
Okay.
in REST API as well, I have option to get data, right? But then either I get all the data, but there is no way to filter that data. I'll just give you an example, right? Uh, let's say we want to push findings to ServiceNow issues. So we have findings application in Archer, and we have issues application in ServiceNow, right? Kind of same thing, right? We want to every day we want to push data from Archer to ServiceNow. Okay. Now, a typical approach would be the first time I'm running this API, I will simply pull all the findings. If there are 220 findings in Archer, I'll simply pull all the 220 findings and I'll put it in ServiceNow, right? I'll push it in ServiceNow via the connection, right? I am scheduling this API to run every day. Now, next day, right? I don't want to again push all those 220 records to ServiceNow, right? That's like waste of resources, It needs computation. It needs computation from ServiceNow servers and from Archer servers and whatever server we are hosting that utility on, right? On the next day, what I will do is I'll create a report where I'll say that give me all the findings where last updated was within last 24 hours. That means I'm only looking for findings that have been changed in last 24 hours. Okay. That will only give me maybe 2, 3, 4, or 5 findings, but not 220, right? That will reduce the computational resources needed for this integration, right? Fetching this data would be a lot faster. Moving this data would be a lot faster. Even running the utility will be a lot faster because now it's only processing 5 records rather than processing the whole 220 records, which is why I often use the report API. I just configure a report and then I use that API to get data from the report. Also, I can define these 5 fields, right? The exact 5 fields which I need in the for the integration, right? I don't really have to get all the fields, the data of all the fields, right? So which is why again, there is no alternate of there is no perfect alternate of a report API in REST API segments, right? In REST API at the moment, again, right, which is why I use both. But then REST API is the future. You will always see new APIs, new methods added to REST, not SOAP. They have stopped developing and supporting SOAP APIs, right? They're just there. Maybe when they have REST API, when they have completed, REST API development, right? They will shut down SOAP APIs. I don't know, right? We also have something called Content API over here, right? Content API is sort of a replacement for your report API. Okay, I'll show you how. So this is your base URL, right? You can click on, sorry, you can click a new tab. And then if you, where is the, right here, right? So get endpoints, right? So if you click on this get endpoints, okay, so this content API, so this is just put content API after your base URL, right? Archer, then content API. You just hit enter. I'm able to access it in the browser because my browser is already authenticated because I have the cookie stored already. But if you're using this in any of your tool, then of course this request needs to be authenticated as well. Okay. So about content API, right? This is an OData feed which gives you access to all the data, right? These are all the endpoints. And if I search for findings, right? So this is my endpoint for findings. So I just put findings after content API, right? And then this will give me data of all the records in findings application, right? This is like all the records with all the fields, right? Again, sort of a replacement for report API, but then it's a lot of data. And uh, if there are 50 fields in findings, I may only need 5 fields, right? So again, uh, a waste of computational resources, right? Uh, from both sides. So there are some filtering option available, like we can use skip, we can use sorting, right? But then again, it's not there yet, right? It cannot match the power of using a report API, right? Simply here. So going back to REST APIs. So if you open up a REST API segment, you go to authentication again, right? Every API request, be it SOAP, be it REST, be it content API, needs a session token in different ways, right? For example, authentication, right? For authentication, what you need to do is this is the URL, right? Your base URL, then platform API slash core slash security slash login. You need to build a request body over here, and then you need to post it. So there are different types of calls, right? Whenever we send a request to an API, it's called a call, right? Or a request, right? So there are different types. There is get, there is put, there is post, there is delete, right? Get, again, right? If you want to get some data, you use get call, right? If you want to create some data, you can either use post or put, right? Typically, we use post. Put is typically used to update an existing data, but we can also use post to update an existing data, right? Again, it depends on how the tool has implemented these APIs. Right? It varies from tool to tool. In Salesforce, we have put. In Archer, we have post. We can use the content API to update a record, or we can use this just content segment, right? It's little confusing. So this content is different from this content API, right? Because this one uses a different URL and then different type of format, right? This will use this kind of format, right? Links, requested object, then ID. If you want to update a record, right? You will pass in the ID. If you want to create a record, you do not pass the ID and then it will create a record. But then if you look at the format, right, again, you will have to pass in the field ID and not the field name, right? And then you will have to pass in the type, you will have to pass in the value, right? You can forget about this update information and then is error, right? But then again, it's little complex to use the content segment of this REST API. Using Archer Content API, it's very easy. It uses, let me show you, right? So this format, it uses this format itself, right? So you can create a JSON object of this finding ID, actual remediation date, answer, application, whatever fields, right? If you want to update these many fields, you can simply just create this object, and then you put it, you post it on the URL, and then boom, you have the record created, right? So I'll just quickly show you a demo. Do you guys know about Postman? Anyone has heard about Postman? Okay. Let me stop sharing and switch to Postman for a moment. Any question before I can start? So do you see this tool? It's called Postman. There are a bunch of other tools as well to test APIs. So basically, right, it's a very good tool. I often use it, right? So you can just use pretty much any APIs, right? Gmail APIs, Archer APIs, right? Salesforce, ServiceNow, right? Again, a lot of APIs, right? So apart from API testing, you can do some automation as well. You can test as well, right? So there are a lot of things available in Postman. I only use it to test REST APIs. Okay, you can also test SOAP APIs in here. It's little complex, but then you can do that, right? So here I have defined an environment variable, which is Archer URL, and I've just put the base URL over here, and this is how you can access these variables, right? Archer URL here, right? So now REST API, uh, again, right? REST API needs two or three things, right? It needs headers, right, which you put in the request itself, right? Sometimes it needs body as well, right? Whenever you are pushing some data to the tool, you will always need a body. Okay. it typically accepts JSON. For example, for authentication, right? So this is the URL, and then this is how you put the your instance name, your username, if there is a domain, right, or the password, right? And once you click on send, then you'll get a response like this, right? Links, requested object, session token. Now again, right, if you are using this in Python, then you should know how to parse this JSON data and then access this particular thing, right? Session token, the value of this session token. Okay, it's very easy, right? So you just do a JSON dot parse. I mean, depends on what language you are using, right? In PowerShell, it's different. In C Sharp, it's different. In Python, it's different, right? But then you just do JSON dot parse, something like that, and then it creates a JSON object, and then you just do object dot requested object dot session token, right? Again, we will look into that as well, right? But then what this will give you, this will give you a session token. And then, right, so this is a content API request, right? So this is how you pass in your cookie here, right? Your session token. Now, again, right, I've created another variable which I have accessed, right? So I can update that session token over here, right? And then I need to pass in a body. And this is again, right, content API offers you a very easy way to create or update records. If you want to update an existing record, so you just put the content ID of that record here, right? Otherwise you put 0 and then it will create a new record. This is where you can select if you want to do a get, post, put, again, right, patch, delete, head options, these are there as well. But then in Archer, we only use get, post, put, and delete. We, I've like I haven't used or I don't know if there is any API which uses it, right? There are a lot of APIs, right? But we mostly use get, post, put, and delete. Okay, so I've selected post over here. I have given my header, which is the only. This is the only header which I need. I can also add this content type to specify that I'm using a JSON type of content, right? Except again, it's so you will find this accept and content type. It's everywhere, right? It's typically is the same thing, right? You just put same application slash JSON text slash HTML application slash HTML plus XML application, all that, right? It's always same, right? So you just copy paste it and put it there. Okay. But even if you do not put these two and you just put cookie equals to Archer session cookie equals to then Archer session token, and then you create a body, right? Finding ID, you just put a finding and then name, and then again, right? These are your uh, field aliases, right? This is not your field name, but then these are your field aliases, right? You can put, and then if you hit send, you see this 200 OK. 200 OK. There are a bunch of response codes as well that I guess if you want to understand, right? So you can simply say uh, API response code example, right? And there are a bunch or HTTP status code, right? Then you can say that anything which starts with 1, right? 100, 101, 102, 103 informational. Anything which starts with 2, it's success. Like this is industry standard, right? I can define if I'm creating a REST API, right? Like we can create REST APIs in Visual Studio, right? If I'm creating a REST API, I can define what kind of error should be displayed in case there is an error, then what should be the status code. But then this is industry standard, and any tool which is implementing REST APIs, they will always use this standard, right, for displaying errors or success message, right? If it's a successful API call, then it will always start with 2. And if it's 200, that means it's okay, right? 201 created, 202 accepted. Again, right, I can define these, but then this is industry standard, right? So 3, if it starts with 3, then it's saying that it needs some kind of redirection, right? That means a follow-up request is needed. If it starts with 4, that means there is some issue with the request, right? If it's 400, that means the request is bad. You are uh, your JSON hasn't been formatted properly, right? Maybe you're missing something. Maybe you're missing a mandatory field, right? That kind of thing. 401 unauthorized. Maybe your username and password is wrong. Maybe the session token that you are using, that is terminated or that is outdated, right? You need to create a new session token, right? Again, forbidden, like you, there is an API which only accepts get call, but then you're trying to do a post call on that API, right? Forbidden. 404 not found, right? Typical, your typical, right? That API URL is not um, uh, available at all, right? And then it's whenever it starts with 5, it's like a server error, internal server error. Maybe the server is too busy to receive any request at the moment, right? Service unavailable, gateway timeout, right? Again, lot of uh, lot of types of status codes are there. We typically see 200, that means created, right? Not 300 in Archer. We sometimes see 400, that means unauthorized or bad request if our JSON is not formatted properly, right? Not found if we have a problem in the URL, that means that API is not found at all, right? Oh, wait, am I sharing the browser or you're
No.
still seeing the my bad. Okay. Wait, let me just share my whole screen. I think it will be easier. Okay, now you see the browser, right?
Yes.
Right. Okay. So what I did is I just Googled API response code or HTTP status code, and then that gave me this page, right? So where you can read about, if you want, right? You can read about all these status codes. But coming back to this, right? So what we did is we first used the login API to create a session token, right? Then we used a content API to create a record since the finding ID is 0 in this case. Okay. So now if you see, right, now we had 27 findings, but now you can see 28. Maybe let me do it one more time. Okay. So we have 28 findings at the moment. And now we see 200 okay over here, right? 200, that means our request is successful. We have 28 records. The moment I refresh, I will see 29 records. And if I open up the last record, I can see that the name and the finding field is updated by this same text, right? Which we have here. Now let's do one more thing. Okay, so the tracking ID is 407433. It's 407, was it 7433? Yeah, 407433, right? Test finding generated by API updated, right? If I send this again, right, we got a 200 okay, right? And then if I open this, now we will see test finding generated by API to updated, right? Again, this is how we can use this API to create or update records in
Is
Archer.
this field tracked in history log?
It depends, right? If it's tracked by Archer in history log, then yes, right? So field changes, name, right? There you go. So updated test finding generated by API to then cross then to updated, right? Again, this thing is this tracking, right? That is defined in your application itself. Right? If history log is tracking this field, then if you and you update it via API, then yes, it is updated by sorry, it is tracked. And then you will see the user with which you have uh, wait. Yeah, data administration, right? That's the user that we were using uh, for creating the session token here, right? Data.admin.1, right? So you will see the same user. So let's say you have a user called findings API, right? Then you will always see that this record has been altered by findings API, right? So you can see that tracking as well. Uh, do you guys have maybe 10 more minutes? Right, I quickly wanted to show you um, an integration, right? So here I have ServiceNow logged in, right? My bad. So ServiceNow gives you free access to their tool, right? So you can create an account on developer.servicenow, and then you can request for a PDI. It's called personal development instance, right? So you can do that. And then ServiceNow offers you this in-house option to authenticate, use APIs to integrate with tools. Okay. So here what I've done is I've just created Archer IRM, and then I've created these two authenticate and get APIs. In authenticate, again, you'll find something similar, that in the HTTP request, I have passed in this same JSON content. I have given these two headers, and then when I click on test, it will give me the token, right? This token. You go back, right? And then you use the get option, right? Here I have a finding ID, the application and the session token, right? What I can do over here is I can put the session token over here. Again, I can click on test. That will give me the JSON of that whole record. Okay. Now, what I can do is I can use something called scheduled script execution in ServiceNow, which lets me execute a certain script at some interval. For example, like this one executes every minute, right? So what this does is it's looking for this particular record, right? 407420, which is, I believe, 407420. Yes, it's finding 26. And then what it's doing is it's updating back in uh, issues table, right? So again, right, for integration, if you're integrating between two tools, you always need a unique identifier to be present in the other tool. In this case, right, for 407420, I have this issue, okay? And I have created a field here in ServiceNow, which is called Archer issue ID, and I put the tracking ID of the record from Archer here, right? Which I can use to find the target record which needs to be updated every time I do this, right? Now this scheduled script execution is running every minute. So what this will do is this will get the data, and this will update the name and the finding to short description and description field over here. Okay, this is our short description. This is our description. So quickly, what I can do is I can edit this, right? Updated in Archer. So if I save this, right, and since it's running every minute, so maybe just give it few seconds, and then you will see that this name will automatically get updated with the new title. Okay, so that's again a very small integration that I have done to show you the practical, this again, right? So this, you see this, and it says updated in Archer now. Maybe you can refresh as well, right? And then it says updated in Archer, right? So since ServiceNow offers this tool in-house, which is why we can use ServiceNow's capability to automatically fetch data from Archer and also send data to Archer. But then some tools do not offer that because Archer doesn't offer that, right? Archer doesn't offer a direct in-house API connectivity tool. ServiceNow does, right? So we can use that. But otherwise, we can create maybe console application in C# or a Python script which can run on a in a Windows scheduler or there are other scheduling tools, right? Queuing tools, right? So we can schedule that Python script or a PowerShell script or a console application to run every minute, every hour to get the data from Archer and put it in ServiceNow or vice versa, right? Get data from ServiceNow and put it in Archer, right? Again, so in the upcoming sessions, we will look into that as well, how we can do that, right? What kind of APIs you use, right? So all that, right? So any question, guys? Anything? Any doubt? Any question? Thought?
Gurdas, this is Abhya this side.
Yes, hi, Abhya.
Hello. So you were showing about the session, what do I say, the general.asmx
Hmm.
record asmx, right? So this
Yeah.
is available only for the on-prem, or can we do this even for a SaaS environment if our link is nice?
Uh, so ideally it should be there, but they may they may have blocked it as well. I don't know,
Okay.
right? So it depends. It depends.
Okay, so this can be restricted, you're telling.
Yeah, this can be restricted. Yes.
Okay.
So, and then I've seen that, if you're logged into the server itself, right, the Windows
Mm.
server, you can access the application by local host. Sometimes it's only available with local hosts, right? Now I'm accessing it from the internet, but it's still available. But that also can be blocked. So you may still be able to access it, but then you won't have the access to use this SOAP API altogether.
Okay. But in
Okay.
SaaS, we just see that there's options only for the REST API.
They may have blocked it, right? They may have blocked it completely to, you know, uh, so
Prevents
that SOAP
usage.
API should not be accessible at all. Yes,
Yeah, okay.
they can.
Okay.
Yeah, they can do that.
Okay. Got it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Sorry, we have a question from Gurdeep. Yes.
Hi, Gudas.
Hey.
So, yeah, just quick because we are new to this and new to APIs. Not
Hmm.
new to APIs, but in terms of the experience and capabilities, we don't know. And you talked about a lot of things in today's session, right? About the kind of
Yep.
APIs and then methods and calls, right? Kind of
Hmm.
overwhelming for us, but then just
Hmm.
to get an overview and idea of how it works. So if you have two tools, right, in this case, ServiceNow and Archer, then it could be some
Yep.
other tool as well. And we are looking at from the Archer perspective. So Archer to some X tool, okay? So when you are starting an integration, what are the prerequisites or what are the things that you look at? I think like kind of API, the other tool support or not. Like for Archer, we understood it's REST and SOAP, both of them, right? And there is content
Yep.
as well, you mentioned. So
Hmm.
what are the prerequisites we look at? And then I think you answered the last part of my question already, mentioning about, I was thinking like, okay, we are building all these API calls, right? But where we are
Yep.
going to put it, schedule it, like how it has to be worked once it is created, right? So just in high level overview, if you can give, basically when we're thinking to integrate two tools, one is Archer and another is some other tool X. So what are the things we have to
Hmm.
figure out initially?
I mean, right again. So of course we are not supposed to know how API works for every tool, right? So I
Correct.
worked on ServiceNow and Archer both, right? I've worked on Salesforce as well
Mhm.
a little bit. So I know that these three tools offer APIs, right? Sales, Salesforce does offer an in-house integration capabilities as well. But then when I integrated Archer with Salesforce, it wasn't because I didn't have access to that tool, right? So I had
Okay.
to create a utility or a script. Okay.
Mhm.
So it sits on a different server where we schedule it, right, via any tool.
Mhm.
There are there are scheduling tools, there are queuing tools, right, that are there
Yeah.
that we can use to schedule that utilities, right? So of course you need an SME from the other tools perspective as well, if it's
Mhm.
ServiceNow or Salesforce, right? Sometimes sometimes there are API gateways that are built on top of these tools for extra security, right?
Okay.
That these APIs are not directly exposed, but then there are
Right.
API gateways that
Mhm.
connect to these APIs and you have access to the API gateways, right? So again, it depends from tool to tool. So
Mhm.
you will have to ask the SMEs that how I can do this in your tool, right? Because from Archer perspective, we know that this is what we can do. But then
Mhm.
from other tools perspective, you should ask that what kind of authentication it uses, right? What are APIs? What is the format of data that it accepts, right? So all those things. Again, right, while we will look into this integration, a practical
Mhm.
example, right?
Mhm.
So you should be able to analyze that on your own, right? That this is what I need. This is what I need from Archer side, and this is what I need from the other tool side.
Correct.
Yes.
Just a quick follow-up. So basically, most of the common integration that comes up when the client asks is for integrating the CMDB to Archer, okay, to pull up the
Yeah.
assets. So
Hmm.
what I was thinking, and I'm just thinking out loud because I don't have much idea of APIs, but then if I'm trying to integrate Archer with something that just supports SOAP, okay, and you
Hmm.
said REST has more options. And can we
Yeah.
can we do some kind of integration? Let's suppose through SOAP, we in the other tool we generate the XML, and then from here we do a REST to first convert
Yes.
that XML to JSON and then input data.
Yes. We can do anything. It's coding, right? We can do anything. So you give me a text file. If I know how to parse a text file, I can
Mhm.
convert that into JSON. I can convert that into XML, and then I can put it in any tool, right?
So when you say
So
convert,
yes.
that will be done by the API itself, or
No.
it's
We'll have to we'll have to transform that data in our code, right?
no. When we say we, how?
Yeah. In the code itself, right? So there are ways in so when you write a Python script, there are ways
Okay.
to access certain part of the data. So you convert
Okay.
that into an object, you get certain fields, data
Mhm.
that belongs to certain fields out of that object, you modify within the code itself, right? So when we
Okay.
are writing that code, we do that transformation. So again, right, API, you get the data, you transform the data, and you put the data. So there are three
Okay.
steps in the API integration
Mhm.
overall,
Makes sense.
right?
Yeah.
So the
Okay.
transformation needs to be done by us in the code.
In the code, right? Not the API.
Yes,
API is will
not the
just pull
API.
up the data, right? Pull or post, whatever.
Yeah, so API will give you a data in a certain format. We
It
cannot
could be
change
XML
that
or JSON,
format.
right?
It could be XML or JSON, but then
Okay.
however they are designed to give you data, that data
Mhm.
will always be in that format.
Makes
You can't
sense.
expect you can't expect the API to transform your data. The transformation, that uh, burden is on us. That how do we want to transform?
Okay. Yeah, yeah. Makes sense.
Hmm.
And it would be with the help of an scripting language such as Python, right? So We just
Python,
follow the
PowerShell,
data.
any
Yeah.
any
Okay.
language that you are comfortable with. You know Java, you can do it. You know Ruby, you can do it, right? You know Python, you know PowerShell, you know C++, you know C Sharp, you can do it.
Okay. Makes sense. That answers my question. Thank you.
Hmm. Welcome. Anything else, guys? Okay. Well, well, then we can conclude our session today.
Yes, Gurdas.
Priya,
So,
yes.
guys, we are starting our batch from 16th August, and see with same trainer Gurdas, and the duration for the training would be around 30 hours, where you are going to cover like hands-on experience on live projects. Okay, so I will share more details in that particular group. The content I already shared, I will share again. So we are starting the live batch from 16th August, Saturday and Sunday in the evening. So the date will be 16th August from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. IST. In case if you missed any session, you will get the recordings as well. So we can conclude. If you have any doubts, you can text me in the group as well. Thanks for joining, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.